praise to the Most High, beloved family. Good to be in the room with y'all again this day that the Most High Yah has made. I'm so thankful to him for all that he does for us, not just for me and my family, but for you and your family and for those who you love. He's been so good to us. We cannot tell it all, as the song says. We cannot tell it all. Well, hallelujah. All praise to the Most High Yah, to his only begotten Son. All praise to the Most High Yah for keeping you safe this week. A lot's been going on. I tell you what, the Most High Yah did not wake us up to be no food. The Most High Yah did not wake us up to say, oh, we the people. And then, like I always say, 10 years later, you don't know a verse in this book. All you know is that we the people. Now, I'm going to tell you, go on and have your fun. Go ahead, eat you some pork and do all of that foolishness. Go ahead and join the world. Go to church sometimes if you want to. Also, if all you're going to do with your awakening is talk about we the people and don't try to learn nothing else in this book. He did not wake you up for you to continue dedicating the majority of your time to this world and the world's distractions. There's things going on. Do not be that person that is trying to figure out what's going on at the last minute. Like them five foolish virgins, they was trying to find that oil at the last minute. I don't know about y'all, but I'm not going to be that one that's out there trying to beg for oil from people that got it. I plan to use my awakening, and I plan to use the things that the Most High has given to us all so that we can benefit from it and we can have something better than what the rest of the community, while they run around with their heads cut off like the chickens, like they say. We need to be the ones that's calm, cool, and collected because we saw it coming a mile away. I could talk more and more on that, but family, these are the last days. These are the last times. I'll get started. But with that said, let's go on to Genesis chapter 12. Some things I'm going to try and tell you as briefly as possible to give you enough information. If you want to go and research it yourself, we cannot cover everything in detail. We don't have time for it. And as always, I don't know everything. I study, I pray, I fast. I'm out there hard, but I don't know everything. So I'm counting on you in the room, the scripture scholars, to help me out. If there's a question, comment, or something that you can help me answer, please do so. I would greatly appreciate that for all the scripture scholars in the room and those who just think they got the right answer. So let's get into Genesis chapter 12, beginning at verse 1. And Yah has said unto Abram, get thee out of your country and from your kindred and from your father's house unto a land that I will show you. And I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless you, and curse him that curse you. And in you shall all the families of the earth be blessed. So Abram departed as Yah had spoken unto him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. Abram took Sarai, his wife, and Lot, his brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered, and the souls that they had gotten in Haran. And they went forth to go to the land of Canaan, and into the land of Canaan they came.
Verse 1 kind of jumped out at me when I was going over it. Y'all called Abram, and it's basically how Israel got started. So he called Abram and started Israel. So he came out of Babylon, basically. And Ruth did the same thing. Abram had to leave everyone except for Lot. Ruth left her family, became a part of Israel. And Yehoshua taught the same thing if they're not willing to leave their father, mother, brother, sister, and so forth. It's all kind of seems to be a theme throughout the Bible.
That's right. That's right. You have a great point, Aki. Appreciate your comment. Definitely being a part of the Most High's family will cost us something. And in Matthew 10:34, Yahushua said, think not that I come to send peace on earth. I came not to send peace, but a sword. So he didn't come to send peace on this earth and make everybody come together, hold hands, sing kumbaya, but he came to bring a sword. And a sword cuts and it divides. It splits things. So he didn't come to bring peace, but a sword. He said, for I am come to set a man at variance against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. A man's foe shall be they of his own household. He that loves his father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. And he that loveth his son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And he that take not his state and follow after me is not worthy of me. He that finds his life shall lose it, and he that lose his life for my sake shall find it. Now, I like that version of it, showing that sometimes you got to be separate from your family, because sometimes it's your family that's causing you to go down and go away from the Most High. But in Luke 14:26, it says basically the same thing, but it adds this one part. It says that if a man come after me and hate not his father and mother and wife, it adds wife in Luke 14:26, where in Matthew didn't say wife, but he's saying, hey, don't put no one over me and above me. And yes, you are correct. The Most High was telling Abram at this point, I want you to leave your family. And that's exactly what Abram did. So Toda for your comment.
Just to kind of reiterate some of those points from in the Hebrew, if you hover over the word kindred, you'll see that that word is Moladeth. That's your birthplace. And so it points back to when Terah didn't continue on with him. He says to get thee out from your kindred, from your Moladeth, the people you were born into, from your father's house, and basically follow me. So I'm just showing you in the Hebrew that kindred, Moladeth, is different from Mishpachah.
Toda for that comment. Any other comments, questions on Genesis chapter 12, verse 1 through 5? So in Genesis chapter 11, it talked about Terah going to Canaan. I've taught this in the past. So if we look at Genesis 11, verse 31, it says Terah took Abram, his son, and Lot, the son of Haran, his son's son, and Sarah, his daughter-in-law, his son Abram's wife, and they went forth with them from Ur of the Chaldees to go into the land of Canaan. And they came unto Haran and dwelt there. So what that verse is saying is that Terah took Abram and the rest of his family, and they started heading to Canaan. And they came to Haran and dwelt there. The next verse, it mentions in the days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. It makes it appear as though Terah had some notification from the Most High Yah to head to Canaan in some way, shape, or form. However, careful study of that, if you go to Genesis 12, the first verse, now Yahuwah had said unto Abram, get thee out of your country and from your kindred and from your father's house unto a land that I will show you. Notice there's a word in there. It's a key word. I'm not going to ask y'all which one it is, but it starts with an H and it's like the forward word, that whole thing, had. Yahuwah had. Now, just a question, is had past, present, or future tense? Okay. All right. That's correct. It's past tense. So that means that at some point in the past, before Genesis 12:1, before Abraham decided to start moving to Canaan, Yahuwah had told him to leave his kinfolks in his father's house. I'm going to give you the short version, the Cliff Notes. Let's go to Acts chapter 7. Acts chapter 7 is talking about the stoning of Stephen. Stephen breaks it down right before they stoned him. He tells us exactly what the deal is. In Acts 7:2, men and brethren, hearken, the Elohim of glory appeared unto our father Abraham when he was in Mesopotamia, before he dwelt in Haran. So notice that keyword, when he was in Mesopotamia, that Elohim appeared to Abraham. When he was in Mesopotamia, before he went to Haran. This is what Elohim said to Abraham while he was in Mesopotamia before he went to Haran. And he said, get thee out of your country and from your kindred and come to a land which I will show you. Verse 4 says, then he came out of the land of the Chaldees and went to Haran. And from there, when his father was dead, he removed him into the land wherein ye now dwell. So the sequence of events basically is that Yah spoke to Abraham and said, hey, I want you to leave your kindred and everybody and go to Canaan. Some kind of way, Terah in Genesis 11:31 takes Abraham from Ur of the Chaldees, Mesopotamia, and Terah took Abram, his son, to Haran. Abraham was supposed to leave Terah in his family, but Terah went along with him. But Terah ends up dying there, and the Most High ends up leading Abram to Canaan from there. But the reason why the Most High wanted Abram to leave his family member, is found in Joshua 24:2. Joshua 24:2 tells us exactly why. They're about to inherit their land, and Joshua's having this conversation with all the people, and basically Joshua says to all the people, "Thus said Yahuwah Elohim of Israel, your fathers dwelt on the other side of the flood in old time. Even Terah, the father of Abraham, and the father of Nahor, and they served other deities." Terah was an idol worshiper, and the Most High was trying to get Abraham away from his kinfolks, therefore being his father. So it goes back to our comment about it's a pattern here about leaving your kinfolks, leaving your family. And if there's people in your family that's idol worshipers, I would think the same thing. If the Most High is really calling you like he was calling Abraham, then he's calling you to separate yourself from those who are serving idols, just as he was calling Abraham to separate himself from those who, in his own family, his own daddy, who was serving an idol. And that's why Terah couldn't go to Canaan, to the promised land with his son Abraham. Terah could not inherit the promises of the Most High Yah. And if Abraham would have continued hanging with his daddy who was serving idols, Abraham himself would not ever have inherited the promises of the Most High Yah in Canaan. If you can see that, somebody throw me a 7 in the chat. 2 Corinthians 6:14 coming to mind. In 2 Corinthians 6:14, it says, "Be ye not unequally yoked together with unbelievers. For what fellowship had righteousness with unrighteousness? And what communion had light with darkness? What concord had Messiah with Belial? Or what part had he that believed with an infidel? What agreement had the temple of Elohim with idols? For you are the temple of the living Elohim, as Elohim said, I will dwell in them and walk in them, and I will be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. Wherefore come out from among them, and be ye separate, said the master, and touch not the unclean thing, and I will receive you." And guess what the benefit of that is? "And I will be a father unto you, and you will be my sons and daughters," said the Master Almighty, Yahuwah Almighty. Anybody want to be a son or a daughter of the Most High Yah? Just put me a 1,000 in the chat. 1,000 in the chat. And guess what? Rabbi Shaul, who the world called Paul, said in 2 Corinthians 6:14-18, he said, you got to separate from idolatry. You got to separate from those who are in idolatry. That's the deal with Abraham, why he had to leave his kinfolk and his family, namely his daddy, Terah, the idol worshiper. All right, let's get back to Genesis 12:6. "And Abram passed through the land unto the place of Shechem, unto the plain of Moreh, and the Canaanite was then in the land. And Yahuwah appeared to Abram and said, Unto your seed will I give this land, and there builded he an altar unto Yahuwah who appeared to him. And he removed from thence unto a mountain on the east of Bethel, and pitched his tent, having Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. And there he built an altar and called upon the name of Yahuwah. And Abram journeyed, going on still toward the south." Any questions, comments?
Shalom. I just got a comment. It's just when I was going through this, I thought it was pretty cool that the Most High mentions it linked. I was looking at all the promises that he gave Abraham, and he told him that come out of his land. And it took me to like Genesis 18:18, Genesis, I believe 17, like 4-9. And he's talking about the promises, and he's saying, I'm going to give you this land, and I'm going to do all this stuff for you, and I'm going to bless you, and I'm going to bless your seed, and it's all going to belong to you. And I thought it was pretty cool that he said it's an everlasting covenant. And it was like, Father, it does not matter who comes in and tries to take over and act like they're the seed. You said it's always going to be ours forever and ever. It's an everlasting covenant throughout our generations. And I just thought that was cool. And I just wanted to throw that in there. That's all. Shalom, shalom.
All right. All praises for your comment. Definitely a great point. That covenant promises and the blessings, it didn't come for unmerited favor, like we used to say in some of those places when we didn't know better. But he mentioned Genesis 18. Let's talk about it. So this is the reason for Abraham's blessing. This is why Abraham was blessed. If there's any shadow of a doubt why Abraham was blessed, this is why he was blessed. In Genesis 18:18, it says that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. All of the nations will be blessed in Abraham. For I know him. I know Abraham. This is the Most High Yah speaking in verse 19, that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of Yah to do justice and judgment, that Yah may bring upon Abraham that which he had spoken of him. What he spoke of Abraham was he's going to give him the promised land from the Euphrates to the Nile. That's what he spoke of Abraham. But Abraham had to command his children. He's got to command his children and his household after him to do those commandments. That's what's going to bring the promised land in focus for Abraham's children. That's what gets the blessing for Abraham's seed, Abraham's children. Now, also in Genesis 26:4, he says, I'm going to make your seed to multiply as the stars of heaven, and give unto your seed all these countries, and in your seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. All the nations of the earth will be blessed in Abraham's seed. The reason why is the same reason, because Abraham was supposed to teach his children and his household the commands. And now the reason why the nations are going to be blessed, because that Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. Highlight my laws, because somebody don't believe we ought to be keeping laws. And Abraham was keeping Yahuwah's charge, Yahuwah's commandments, Yahuwah's statutes, Yahuwah's laws, and he was teaching those things to his children and his household. Here it was, Isaac, the Most High, told him, don't go to Egypt. He said, don't go to Egypt during this famine. Stay in Gerar, and I'm going to bless you and give you the promises of Abraham, because Abraham obeyed my voice, which is the whole word, not just the New Testament or just the Old Testament, but he obeyed his voice and kept his charge, his commandments, his statutes, and of course his laws. That's the fact of it. If someone is not keeping his charge, his commandments, his statutes, and his laws, he's not or she's not obeying the voice of the Most High Yah. And if they're not doing that, then they're not really walking in the faith of Abraham. Y'all ever heard somebody talking about, I'm in the faith of Abraham? Put a Y for yes or N for no. If you're walking in the faith of Abraham, Abraham taught his seed to obey Yah's voice, keep his charge, keep his commandments, his statutes, and his laws before they were given 10 commandments on Mount Sinai. Before Mount Sinai, they had laws to keep. Isn't that something? Isn't that amazing for some folks to realize? I know it was amazing for me when I finally realized they was keeping laws before the 10 commandments was given. I'm gonna tell you too, 1 Peter 2:21, I'm sidetracked real quick. I'm gonna come back. 1 Peter 2:21 talks about our Messiah. For even hereunto were you called. You were called to come to the Messiah, because Messiah also suffered, leaving us an example that you should follow his steps. You should follow his steps. Who did no sin, neither was guile found in his mouth. He did no sin. Did Messiah do any sin? Just a Y for yes or an N for no. 1 John 3:4. 1 John 3:4. Messiah didn't do any sin, family. He didn't do it. 1 John 3:4 tells us the definition of sin. Whomsoever commits sin transgress also the law, for because sin is the transgression of the law. Sin is breaking the law. Did Messiah do any sin? Did he transgress the law? Messiah didn't do no sin, family. 1 John 2:6. He that said he abide in him ought himself also to walk even as he walked. If you say that you abide in Mashiach, that you're in the Messiah, highlight this, himself also to walk even as he walked. You better be doing what Messiah did. He did no sin. He didn't break the laws because he thought they was done away with. If y'all get the point, somebody throw me a 200 in the chat. We got to walk like Messiah walked, and he didn't dare to break the law. And he never said so foolishly out of his perfect mouth that the law was done away with. I think it's going to be a rough day for some people, a day like 1,000 years, a day like eternity on Judgment Day for those people that's willing to chance, willing to blow on the dice and throw it and say, oh, ain't no law. I'm going to take my chances. Give me that pork. Give me that pork. I'm going to eat that pork. I'm going to take my chances. That piece of pork meat is worth it. Not following the commandments and the laws and the statutes and the judgment and obeying the Most High Yah's voice is worth it to some people. Have mercy on their soul. They don't realize. They don't even realize. So Abraham in Genesis 12:4, he's 75 years old when he leaves Haran and starts heading to Canaan. Sarah is 10 years younger than him, so she's 65 years old. Sarah is 65 years old and hitting the road with better known as Abram at this time. In Genesis 12:5, Abram took Sarah, his wife, and Lot, his brother's son, Haran's son, and all their substance that they had gathered. So they had possessions and the souls that they had gotten in Haran. Ooh, they had some souls too. What do it mean by souls? What do they mean by souls? Somebody throw it in the chat for me. All the souls that they had gotten in Haran. They took them all and went to Canaan. What they did was they took servants. That's right. You got it. Servants. Let's break that down because somebody don't believe what I'm saying. In Genesis 14:14, y'all remember Melchizedek was there, but before Melchizedek came, some kings had a war and they took Lot, Abram's brother slash nephew. And somebody came and escaped and they told Abram, they said, Abram, they took Lot and all this stuff and his family and all. And in Genesis 14:14, and when Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his trained servants born in his own house, 318, and pursued them unto Dan. 318 that was born in his own house. He had some servants, y'all. This was just this wasn't the people's parents that went to fight. This was just the young men that went with Abram. I think it even calls them young men a few verses down. If you go down there, yeah, there you go. Last verse. It says, he don't want nothing from the king of Sodom. He said he's just going to take that the young men have eaten, and the three Amorites, Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre, that came and helped him fight. Those 318 young men, they part of the souls that came with him from Haran. In Genesis 15, verse 2 and 3, Abraham was talking to the Most High, and Most High said, I'm your exceeding great reward at the end of verse 1. And Abram said, Master Yahuwah, what will you give me? I go childless, and the steward, which is son in Hebrew, of my house is this Eleazar of Damascus. And Abram said, behold, to me you have given no seed, and lo, one born in my house is mine heir. He was saying the closest thing I got to a son is Eleazar of Damascus. Notice that all of those souls, Genesis 12, that came with Abram and Lot and Sarah from Haran, and they had possessions too. They wasn't poor, they wasn't running and fleeing like some of these books says. They was going because the Most High told them to go. That's the reason there's no evidence in the scripture that leads us to believe that they were fleeing from any harm or anything other than idolatry itself. I want to point out in verse 7 too, the Most High appears to Abraham, and there he builds an altar unto the Most High Yah. Then he goes and he moves to a mountain on the east of Bethel and pitched his tent, having Bethel on the west, Ai on the east, and there he builds another altar. Abraham, every time he was making a move, he was building an altar. And I think that is a hint for us that if we want to have faith like Abraham, and not just be talkers, be talking, I got the faith of Abraham, and I'm out there getting drunk on Saturday night. I'm out there doing foolishness. I'm out there watching my Netflix and playing on Insta Chat and all this other foolish stuff and thinking that I'm going to the kingdom or something. But we ought to be building altars. Just like Abraham, if we got the faith of Abraham, we need to build an altar. I also want to point out that Abraham pitched his tent having Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. Bethel is the house of Elohim, where Yaakov later on has this dream about Yaakov's lad in Genesis 28. But Ai is in Joshua Achan caused everybody to get defeated and get killed because he stole that Babylonian garment, idolatry. And it just struck me ironically when I studied that, how Bethel was on one side of Abraham's tent and AI is on the other side, where you have on one side the house of Elohim, Bethel, and you have AI, and it became a heap of ruins because the Israelites burned it. And it was like in my mind, it was saying, there's a choice going on here. We can either choose the house of Elohim or we could choose the ruin and destruction. So I'm just throwing it out there real quick for the scripture scholars. Genesis chapter 12, verse 10. And there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down into Egypt or Mitzrayim to sojourn there, for the famine was grievous in the land. And it came to pass when he was come near to enter into Egypt, that he said unto Sarai his wife, Behold, now I know that you are a fair woman to look upon. Therefore it shall come to pass, when the Egyptians shall see thee, that they shall say, This is his wife, and they will kill me, but they will save thee alive. Say, I pray thee, to Sarah, You are my sister, that it may be well with me for your sake, and my soul shall live because of you. And it came to pass that when Abram was come into Egypt, the Egyptians beheld the woman, that she was very fair. Sarah was beautiful. The princess also of Pharaoh saw her and commended her before Pharaoh, and the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. And he entreated Abram well for her sake, and he had sheep and oxen, he asses, and men servants, and maid servants, and she asses, and camels. Any comments, questions?
Yes, we know that, as you already have showed and proved and everything, Abram obeyed Yah, the commandments, the law, but yet he thought up this idea. And it just kind of reminds me of the proverb that says, there's, I can't even, what's the name? There's a way which seems right to a man.
Proverbs 14:12.
Yes, yes. And even though he obeyed and knew it, the law and everything, with him pawning his wife off as his sister, he wasn't being truthful. And he was doing it for himself, so he wouldn't die. And I mean, it just kind of looks like to me, that whole little scenario there was something that he was thinking up, which didn't coincide with Yah's law. Because if he'd just kept it going and said, yeah, this is my wife, we're just going, this is my wife and everything, Yah would have protected.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
Possibly. I think you're right that the Most High Yah would have protected Abram and Sarah, because he promised Abram seed in the land. So nothing was going to happen to him until he gave him the fulfillment of that promise. So I think you're right in that aspect. Anyone else? Comments? Questions? Go ahead, Aki. Shalom.
I just got just a quick comment. It's just miraculous, right? When you brought that up, it's just people are always snatching our people all the time. We got Dinah got snatched, and then we got Sarah got snatched. And then, transatlantic slave trade, it reminds me, is that Genesis 15 that said, with the dream he said, your people will go into captivity and they'll be servants and whatnot?
15:13.
Right on. It's just amazing how the righteous people, the good people, get snatched up. That's all.
You're right, Aki. I think the Most High allows it oftentimes so that he can see what we're made of, so to speak, test us. Let me give you a quick snapshot of what's going on in this whole thing. This happens to Abraham and to Isaac, where Abraham says to Pharaoh in Genesis chapter 12 that Sarah is my sister. In Genesis chapter 20, he also says the same thing to Abimelech, who is the Philistine king. In Genesis 26, Isaac says this to Abimelech, which just means Abi, my father, Melech, the king, my father, the king. So Abimelech is a title, not a person, not a name, rather. And Pharaoh is a title, not a name. But there's a reason why Abraham said Sarah is my sister. We'll cover that in the next part. Genesis 12:17. And Yahuwah plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. And Pharaoh called Abram and said, What is this that you have done unto me? Why did you not tell me that she was your wife? Why said you, she is my sister, so I might have taken her to me to wife. Now, therefore, behold, thy wife, take her and go your way. And Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him, and they sent him away and his wife and all that he had. Questions, comments on that last part? Pharaoh finds out Abram and Sarah are actually husband and wife, and he says, hey, why you deceive me? And y'all got to go. Y'all got to leave.
Yes, I think it's a little comical there because he called him in and said, why didn't you tell me this is your wife? But he didn't say that until after the plagues came. So whether it was his wife or not, he was still going to take her. But he's saying, why do you mean, because of these plagues, you should have told me. And we all know that whether it was his wife or not, he was going to take her. And not until he got plagued was he going to regret it.
That's exactly what he says. He says, so I might have taken her to me to wife. So Pharaoh in Genesis 12:19 was going to take her for a wife. Now, he probably had more than one wife, but he was going to add Sarah to that list. In times past, I used to think that, okay, man, they took Sarah. What stopped them from doing whatever? But they didn't have the same protocol that we have today. And we can see that in Esther chapter 2, verse 12. If we can go there real quick, I'll just bring that out. In Esther 2:12, this is when Esther Hadassah was taken to the king to become one of his concubines or wives, and she ended up becoming the queen. Now, when every maid's turn was come to go to King Ahasuerus, after that she had been 12 months according to the manner of women, for so were the days of their purifications accomplished to 6 months with oil of myrrh, and 6 months with sweet odors, and with other things for the purifying of the women. So notice that there was 12 months of purification. 6 months was to purify them with oil of myrrh, and 6 months of purifying with sweet odors. King Ahasuerus was not going to have any relations with Esther or Hadassah for 12 months. She was going through this purification process that all of his concubines had to go through. It doesn't say, but I imagine that Pharaoh, being also a king, had a similar thing where he did not touch Sarai. And that's why in Genesis 12:19, he says that I might have taken her to wife, meaning that nothing happened to this point. Of course, we know nothing happened, but that's what he says in Genesis 12:19. Any other comments, questions? Okay. Okay. Let me just give y'all a tidbit about this whole situation with Sarai, trying to figure out how to cut it down without going through a bunch of verses. This go round, as stated, Abraham says to Pharaoh in Genesis 12 and to Abimelech in Genesis 20, and Isaac says to Abimelech in Genesis 26. But let's look at Genesis 20 and see what happened. Let's go to Genesis chapter 20. In Genesis chapter 20, verse 9-ish, I think. Yeah. So this same thing happens with King Abimelech. Abimelech is the king of the Philistines. Abram goes down south toward Gerar, and Abimelech ends up taking Sarai, and he's going to put her in his harem. And Abram says, Sarah is my sister, and Sarah says, Abram is my brother in this case. Then Abimelech called Abram and said unto him, what have you done unto us? Sound familiar? Sound just like what Pharaoh was saying to Abraham. What have you done to us? What you did? You almost made us mess up. So Abimelech called Abram and said unto him, what have you done unto us? And what have I offended thee, that you have brought on me and on my kingdom this great sin? You have done deeds unto me that ought not be done. And Abimelech said unto Abraham, what saw thou that you have done this thing? What did you see that made you want to do this to us? What did you see about us? So if we go back to verse 3, it gives you a little bit of the story before Abimelech talks to Abraham. It says, but Elohim came to Abimelech in a dream by night. So the Most High comes to Abimelech in his dreams and says to him, behold, you are but a dead man. For the woman which you have taken, for she is a man's wife. So the Most High pops up on Abimelech in a dream. He does a drive-by and say, you a dead man. And so I imagine that Pharaoh probably got the same type of dream in Genesis 12. And this is what made Abimelech say, man, what did you do to us? Why did you do this? And what did you see about us? Note in verse 4, it says, but Abimelech had not come near her. But Abimelech had not come near her. Abimelech hadn't touched Sarah. So I'm assuming that there's some purification process that was going on there. And I assume the same thing for Pharaoh, king of Egypt. With that said, I want to draw your attention to what Abimelech said in verse 10 to Abraham. Abimelech in verse 10 said to Abraham, "What sawest thou?" Highlight, what sawest thou that you have done this thing? What did you see about us? What did Abimelech mean? What did you see about us? If we go back to verse 7 in that same chapter, this is what the Most High tells Abimelech about Abraham. "Now therefore restore the man his wife, for he is a prophet." Highlight, for he is a prophet. And so Abimelech gets intel from the Most High that Abraham is a prophet. So in verse 10, Abimelech asks Abraham, "What did you see that you did this thing and said she's your sister versus saying she's your wife?" So Abraham tells him straight up in verse 11. Abraham said, "Because I thought surely the fear of Elohim is not in this place, and they will slay me for my wife's sake." So Abraham was a prophet, and he's saying, "I thought surely the fear of Elohim is not in this place, and they gonna kill me for my wife's sake." And then he explains in verse 12, "And yet, indeed, she is my sister. In fact, she's my sister, the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife." So I'm gonna share my notes with y'all for a little bit. Terah had a wife, number one, and he had a son named Abram. Terah had wife number two and had a daughter named Sarai, who also becomes his daughter-in-law through Abraham. And that's why Abraham says, "And yet she is my sister. She is the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife," because Abraham is a prophet. Let's hit it again for review's sake so everybody be on board the bus. In Genesis 20, Abimelech asks Abraham in verse 10, "What sawest thou?" What did you see? Because in Genesis 20, verse 7, the Most High told Abimelech in a dream, Abraham is a prophet. He is a prophet. So Abimelech knows Abraham's a prophet, and he's like, "Man, what did you see about us that you had to lie and say she's your sister?" And Abraham said, "Well, it's not really a lie because she is my sister. So I'm not lying to you. I told you the truth, but I told you the convenient truth. I didn't tell you the whole truth," is what Abraham was saying. So Abraham is not lying to Abimelech here in this case. What he was doing was he's a prophet. So I want to go back to verse 10 again. I'm going to go ahead and shut it down because I'm going to say too much. But what I want to say is that in verse 10, Genesis 20, verse 10, Abimelech said to Abraham, "What sawest thou?" He's asking a prophet, "What did you see?" And Abraham said, "What I saw, that I did this thing because I thought surely the fear of Elohim is not in this place. Y'all don't fear the Most High Yah. And they will slay, killed it, murder me for my wife's sake." Let's go on back to Genesis chapter 12. Now, in verse 10, it said there's a famine in the land. Abram decides to go to Egypt because the famine was grievous. It was getting bad, y'all. And in verse 11, "And it came to pass when he was come near to enter Egypt," when he was getting close to entering Egypt, "that he said to his wife, Behold, now I know," highlight, "I know that you are a fair woman to look on." Abraham, the prophet, got a revelation from the Most High Yah. Sarah's a good looking woman, 65 years old plus at this time, but she's still looking good. And Abraham says in Genesis 12:12, "Therefore it shall come to pass." It will come to pass. It's gonna happen. I see it. I'm a prophet. It shall come to pass. I see it. I'm a prophet. "When the Egyptians shall see you, Sarah, that they shall say, This is his wife, and they will kill me, but they will save you alive." Abraham wasn't just talking, he was prophesying. He was putting out a prophecy at that point because Abraham is a prophet. And he was saying, Sarah, this is what's going to happen when we go to Egypt, Mizraim. They're going to look at you and they're going to want to kill because they're going to know I'm your husband. So you got to tell them you my sister. And by the way, it ain't a lie because you are my sister. We have different mamas, but the same daddy, Terah. That's why Abraham told Sarah to say that, because he's a prophet. And as a result, Abraham was blessed, it said in verse 16. Pharaoh gave him all kind of stuff. It says he entreated Abram well for her sake, and he had sheep and oxen and asses and men servants and maid servants and she asses and camels. He was getting all kind of stuff, all kind of perks and goodies from Mr. Pharaoh. And then Pharaoh's house get plagued in verse 17. And Pharaoh calls Abram after he has a dream, perhaps, with the Most High Yah saying, you're but a dead man. You touch Sarah, you dead. I'm letting you know. And Pharaoh called Abram and said, what is this that you have done unto me? What do you mean what I did to you? The Most High told me in a dream, perhaps, I'm a dead man. You did something to me that I'm over here and shaking in my boots. Why did you not tell me she was your wife? How did he figure that out? Who told him that? Maybe he had a dream. In verse 19, he said, why did you say she is my sister so I might have taken her to me to wife? I would have married her if I wouldn't have found out. Now, therefore, behold, take your wife and go your way. Man, leave. I'm having nightmares, perhaps, dreams. That's talking about I'm going to die if I touch that woman. And Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him. Pharaoh said, don't y'all touch that man, nor his wife. Pharaoh makes a law and he signs it. Don't touch him. And they sent him away and his wife and all that he had. Abraham got to keep all the gifts, the parting gifts. So any comments, questions on anything? I think that's the end of the chapter, Genesis 12. Anything anyone wants to bring up?
Yes. Thanks for that revelation, by the way. That, as everybody's saying in the chat, that was fire. But I also want us to see it from the perspective of as Yisrael and being the wife of our Father. And the same thing is going to happen with us, where he's going to say, they're going to say, send them away from here. We're not going to do anything with Israel anymore. The same type of deliverance is going to happen for the bride of Yahuwah, which is Yisrael, his children, in the same way. So I always see the whole picture as far as Yisrael and our relationship to the Father.
All praises, all praises. The Most High definitely loves his people, Israel. He's always going to be on our team when we are keeping his commandments. A shameless plug for the book. We got to keep his commandments. So we got to do right. And Abraham was doing right. He was bragging that Abraham kept his laws, statutes, and commandments and was teaching his children and his household to do so. Now, there's a bunch of other things in this chapter that we could chop up, but for the sake of time, we got to end it. But I hope that through the discussions we've had, Most High could be praised. Iron can sharpen iron, and we can grow and help one another. That's the way he designed it to be, iron sharpening iron. There's a lot going on in the world, like I said, but we have to grow to know his word better and better each and every day.
I'm levitating on another plane, elevating past the tricks you playing.